5 years ago, I was 110 kg, far overweight for what a man my age should actually be. I was around 19 at the time and I couldn't stop consuming sugar. I ate about a pack of cookies a day. My go-to choices were Maryland cookies or Oreo cookies, but I ate a pack of cookies every single day and I couldn't control myself. I had actually convinced myself that I wasn't gaining any weight because in the mirror I, quote unquote, didn't look any different. I did. Anyway, fast forward a bunch of years and through quitting sugar multiple times and trying to eat healthy a bunch of times, I've dropped the weight. I'm about 85 kg currently as I speak, but I'm still not at the body percentage level that I want to be. Anyway, a couple of months ago, about the start of this year, 2025, I quit sugar for 30 days. Here's what I found out. You should quit sugar not just because it's addictive, but because it causes a myriad of health problems along the lines of potentially making you diabetic, causing liver and kidney failure, rotting your teeth, rotting your body from the inside out, ultimately changing your gut microbiome, which can even result with some mental issues, such as depression, anxiety, and even further down the line, dementia or Alzheimer's. Now, most of us want to quit sugar, not because of any of these issues, which are extremely pressing. We want to quit it because, frankly, it makes us look bad, right? It causes inflammation, joint pain, and all of that stuff. But inflammation also causes our skin to get oilier, to get spottier, to become more damaged. It causes our teeth to rot, and worst of all, it causes us to gain fat. None of us really want to be fat. Trust me, like I said, I've been there. I know the way you think. I know what you feel when you're there. And so we've been led to believe that quitting sugar can reduce fat. But in today's day and age, does it really? Now, in order to quit sugar, the majority of us would have to throw stuff away. But I'm an all or nothing kind of guy, so when I say I'm gonna quit it, I do quit it. I find it easier that way, even if I have it in the house, even if it's staring me down the barrel and I'm drooling through my teeth, as long as I don't have a taste, I'm alright. The second I have that first taste though, that's where it all goes down the drain. I live with my family, so naturally I can't get rid of all sugar, otherwise they'd be coming at me with pitchforks. But there were a couple of things that I could do. Number one, I could just not eat any sugar. At least, not any added sugar. What I mean to say, when I say I've quit sugar for 30 days, I mean to say that I quit all added sugar. This ultimately means that I can still have honey and fruits. The effects of those two on the system are entirely different, but that's not why we're here. We're here to figure out exactly what happens when you quit 30 days of sugar, or at least what happened to me when I quit for 30 days. Now, if you do want to quit this extremely addictive and white substance, there's a couple things you need to know. First things first, a lot of foods contain sugar. For example, bread, particularly whole wheat bread, can contain anywhere between 1 and 3 grams of sugar. Flavored yogurt probably contains anywhere between 15 and 25 grams of sugar in a 150 gram pot. The thing is, they can even add sweeteners just so they can add even more sugar. Something with the enzymes there makes you basically think it's not overly sweet. Yeah, we think it's healthy, but chances are it isn't really. Bottled smoothies and juices, let's be honest, we already know are pretty much full of sugar. Any kind of concentrate juice, full of sugar. Basic colas, full of sugar. All of this stuff is full of sugar. Store-bought tomato sauce, roughly 4 grams per tablespoon. Canned baked beans can go from anywhere between 10 to 15 grams of sugar per can. Salad dressings are particularly absurd because a lot of people will go to places like McDonald's where they have their own salad dressings, or will buy stuff from places like Tesco's or Sainsbury's, your local favorite supermarket, and these ones will have anywhere between 5 and 7 grams of sugar for every 2 tablespoons. Now, what we're all absolutely susceptible to, particularly, is the morning cereal. Personally, I take cereal as a dessert because the amount of sugar that's in cereal is almost criminal. Take this off-brand Neo rings. Per serving, you have about 8 grams of sugar. This is per serving. The average person does not eat a serving of these every morning. The average person eats about 2 or 3, depending on your bowl size. And each bowl was not created equally, right? The bigger bowls, way better. That's what I'm talking about. But it means you're getting more than roughly 16 grams per bowl that you have. And let's not forget the natural sugars found in milk, although those can be considered actually healthy for you. Now, these are the culprits that if you do want to get rid of sugar, need to go in the bin instantly. I'm talking right now, if right now is when you want to start the challenge. Which brings me on to my other point. I'm challenging you to go 30 days without any sugar. Now, if you've already done this, done it in the past, or maybe you're not eating sugar right now, let me know in the comments below exactly how you felt during and after the entire process. And if you haven't done it, come back in 30 days and please let me know. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this. All right, so where exactly did I get with the sugar challenge? Well, let's start with week 1. Week 1 was quite easy actually. A lot of the stuff that I'd normally eat, I stopped. I primarily focused on trying to eat whole food diets, but I made one little change and I started eating sweeteners instead. I mean, technically they aren't sugar, and so I thought, why not? I can still get my sweet kick, but I can make it healthier at the very least. At the time, I was roughly 86.1 kilograms, and I looked like this. Right? Not bad. I mean, this is down from the 110 kilograms I started with a couple of years ago. And keep in mind, I do go to the gym at least 4 to 5 times a week. But there's one thing that I've learned throughout time, is that no matter how much you exercise, you can never out-train a bad diet. Trust me, maybe you'll look good, but you certainly won't feel good. I also ultimately went through week 1 trying to find alternatives to the sugar that I could have. The thing is, at the start of a no sugar diet, even though you might want to eat fruits and honey, for example, in all honesty, it doesn't pack the same punch. It doesn't give you the same kick that sugar does. Sugar has this mellow, not too sweet sweetness. I'm not sure if you know what I mean, but if you try to eat honey right now, try to have just a couple of, like a tablespoon or two, you'll find that it's way sweeter than anything that you can naturally handle. Trust me, that was me at the start. I couldn't handle too much honey, and fruits just weren't palatable. They didn't have the same level of taste that, for example, sugar, cookies, donuts would. I mean, even now I'd have a donut and it would taste absolutely amazing. But here's the kicker. By roughly day 7, I was finding that my palate was a lot simpler. I didn't have to reach for these foods that were packed with absolute boatloads of sugar. But then here comes the caveat, week 2. Before I go on to week 2, let me break down exactly what I found. What makes sugar good, what makes sugar bad, and the different effects that you might get depending on the foods that you eat. Now, I've already mentioned what I'm exactly quitting. I'm quitting table sugar. This includes all the different boatloads of sugar that essentially is only one ingredient. What that means to me is table sugar, brown sugar, golden sugar, caster sugar, demerara sugar, all different types of sugar that essentially only contain one thing: sucrose. Sucrose being the mix of fructose and glucose. Now in particular, I decided to get rid of these sugars from my diet because they're the ones that essentially come with absolutely no nutrition. Other than the sugar that gives you the sweet taste, they don't come with any fiber, any different chemicals, or mixtures within the actual foods themselves that can help your body digest them and offset the bad chemical imbalances that come along with sugar. But contrary to popular belief, honey has actually been shown to have completely different effects on the body, even though it contains such a high amount of sugar. First things first, honey is way sweeter than sugar, and so you'll find that you can actually eat way less of it in terms of calorific content and in terms of grams of sugar that your body actually takes in. Second, you'll find that honey actually contains a lot of good enzymes, antioxidants, and nutrients for you that are both beneficial in and outside of the body. For example, invertase actually breaks down the sucrose into its fundamental glucose and fructose formations, making it easier for the body to digest the honey. And given honey's natural antibacterial and antifungal properties, catalase regulates the antimicrobial properties so it doesn't damage the gut when it enters the system. Along with this, it also contains a boatload of different antioxidants, such as flavonoids and phenolic acids, which can essentially reduce oxidative stress that ultimately reduces the inflammation and chronic stress that your body consistently goes under when it works out, or when, for example, cortisol is released into your system. With less inflammation, you'll see less heart disease, you'll see less cortisol entering the bloodstream, which will in turn promote better health and better sleep. One of the reasons why actually it's been shown that taking honey before going to sleep can promote a better REM cycle. Now, including all of this stuff as well, honey actually promotes a lot of good prebiotics within the gut, helping the gut create its healthy microbiome in order to be able to better digest other kinds of foods that you might be eating down the line. Your gut is essentially what determines whether your body is going to be healthy or unhealthy. Now, fruit in the same way does a lot of the same things that honey does. Both foods come with a bunch of different enzymes, chemicals, nutrients, and antioxidants that essentially help those foods break down in a completely different way from table sugar. One more obvious example is the fiber found in those foods. Because the foods come with fiber, the gradual release of insulin once you've eaten the foods is actually a lot lower and a lot slower throughout a longer period of time, giving you more energy as well than, for example, table sugar. When you do have table sugar, it spikes your insulin levels, and it's one of the primary leading causes of diabetes. Breaking your natural sugar ceiling, sugar barrier way too often is exactly what promotes low sensitivity to insulin. So we get to week 2. Now this is where I began to find one of the major problems with quitting sugar, particularly in today's day and age. 100 years ago, people wouldn't have had this exact problem, but I certainly did. And it was that I was over-consuming sweeteners. I no longer had my sugar fix, but sweeteners was still on the table. And so, where I couldn't have regular cola, I had Coke Zero. Where I couldn't have regular puddings, I had high protein puddings instead. Ultimately, I was eating a lot of chemicals, but not sugar. Now luckily, I've already been reading labels and looking at my health for the past half a decade. But if you're brand new to this, I can understand why it'd be extremely confusing to think that you're being healthy when you're eating so much BS. Yes, sweeteners aren't sugar per se, but they have a lot of the same issues that come along with sugar, and some new ones to boot. But I digress, that's for another video. Week 2 was basically the same as week 1 other than that. The majority of my sugar cravings had left me, and I was finding that I was looking a little bit leaner. But funnily enough, where people say that usually brain fog lifts, I was feeling a lot more foggier than usual. So here I was, about 2 weeks into this diet, and I wasn't really feeling any positive effects. I looked the same as I always looked. I didn't have some crazy transformation. Mind you, I still had 2 more weeks left, and so to be honest with you, I banked on those last 2 weeks. Perhaps something could change. But this led me down the rabbit hole of exactly why is sugar pushed on us so readily and in such spades. For example, the average recommended daily amount of sugar in America is roughly 9 teaspoons or 36 grams. And by the World Health Organization, particularly working in Europe, is about 50 grams for a person that consumes roughly 2,000 calories. It's about 10% if you want to be relatively safe of your total calorie consumption for the day, or about 5% if you want to be particularly healthy. Now you can already see some issues arising from this. For example, when you're overweight, chances are you're already consuming an excess of calories, perhaps over 500 more than you naturally need. So already the baseline of sugar consumption that's recommended by the World Health Organization is way higher than what it should actually be for a regular person. 2,000 calories is a regular person's kind of diet. But when you're eating a lot, when you weigh way more than you naturally should, your average maintenance calories can be roughly 2,500 a day. And if you eat roughly 3,000, 4,000 a day, then you can see how easily those grams of sugar can accumulate. Now, why is this? We already know, for example, that sugar is about 9 times more addictive than cocaine, and yet it's still legal. It causes problems on a long enough time frame. Heart disease was never the leading cause of death until after sugar was made prevalent in the regular household. And even before ultra-processed food, the only time you'd ever see extremely overweight people would be because they were rich enough to afford not just a lot of food, but a lot of sugar, a lot of sweet goodness. The adverse effects of sugar aren't that readily available. Heart failure doesn't happen momentarily. It doesn't happen within a week of consuming sugar or even 2. It can't really happen if you consume too much sugar in one sitting, unless it's quite literally bowls and bowls of the thing. No, the heart issues and the diabetes, the crumbling teeth, the lack of bone density, the brain fog, the liver and kidney issues, they all come down the line, years and years later. And so it's very difficult to find that sugar actually causes these things. All we can do is find some kind of correlation, but it's pretty damn evident if you ask me. And then at the same time, because of sugar's addiction, people eat way more than that. Now you remember that daily recommended amount? 5% of your total recommended daily calories? Yeah, guess what? If that's about 25 grams, the average person consumes roughly 68 grams of sugar every single day, or 17 teaspoons. Along with this, sugar is really cheap to produce. So this not only keeps us buying more and more sugar from companies like Coca-Cola or like Mars, it keeps their prices relatively low so that we can actually justify our purchasing of products packed with a bunch of sugar. During weeks 3 and 4, I really felt the effect of having no sugar in my diet. But when most people find that actually having no sugar in their diet is a positive, I found it a negative. Like I mentioned, during week 2, I started to overconsume a lot of ultra processed garbage. Now I made it a point not to eat any added sugar, but like I mentioned, sweeteners were still on the table, and God was I having a lot of them. At this point, I basically developed an addiction to Coke Zero, because even though it has trace amounts of sugar, it has a lot of sweeteners and it still has caffeine. A lot of addictive properties come with these foods, and so I was still binging on this stuff. You see, I have a sweet tooth, so that actually makes quitting sugar or quitting anything sweet a million times more difficult. I just don't work that way. When I have one food, I want another. And when I have that other, I want 10 more. The only way it works for me is to completely bin everything in my house or completely cut all of it out at once. The second I go cold turkey is the second I stop consuming sugar. But by week 3 and 4, I wasn't feeling any of the positive effects. I was more bloated than ever, and I swear to you, I went from 86.1 kg to roughly 86.6. I had gained 0.5 of a kilo in 2 weeks, disheartening me greatly. Where I was expecting to drop some water weight, clear up a bunch of my brain fog, and perhaps get more disciplined than ever, I found exactly the opposite. This is because a couple of years ago, when sweeteners weren't as prevalent as they currently are, with the amount of high protein foods that we can find on shelves and in stock, quitting sugar was actually a lot easier. Quitting sugar quite literally meant that you'd have to jump on a whole foods diet, on a single ingredient diet. And instantly doing something along the lines of this can give you all of the benefits. Except right now there are so many different alternatives to sugar that still don't result in any kind of whole food diet. And so even if you end up cutting out sugar, you could potentially find that you have none of the positive health benefits and only experience the negatives, like in my case. Now, obviously, my takeaway from this wasn't that cutting out sugar was in any way a negative to my life. Actually, it still was a net positive. The thing is, there are multiple things causing your downfall from the inside out, quite literally. When your gut microbiome is disrupted from different foods like sugar or like sweeteners, emulsifiers, ultra-processed foods, then even if you're not eating sugar, you can still get all of the negative oxidative stress consequences that come with eating all of these different foods. By the end of week 4, I was roughly 87 kilograms, which is the point where I'd been trying to drop for the past 4 months, all gone within 1 month of quitting sugar. I knew that my problem wasn't that I quit sugar, but was the fact that I started getting way snackier. Because I said no to sugar and because I said yes to everything else, essentially I ruined my metabolism that much more. I started snacking that much more, consuming that much more calories. Your takeaway from this shouldn't be that stopping to eat sugar is in any way negative. Stopping to eat sugar is a definite positive, but only really comes when you actually look at everything else you're eating across the board. For this test specifically, I made sure to only quit sugar. I was still adamant on eating ultra-processed foods, and I was still adamant on eating anything in my fridge. My diet at this point was about 50% ultra-processed and 50% whole foods, because that's just the natural diet I went along with for the longest time. I quit out all candy bars, I quit out all chocolates, I quit out anything along those lines. I had the added sugars here or there in certain foods. For example, rotisserie chickens have some added sugar in the form of brown sugar, but in general, I had such small amounts of those and so sparsely separated that they definitely weren't the issue. The only issue was that I was doing a test, and because of that, I decided to eat everything else. You need to essentially go on a whole foods diet, a single ingredient diet that completely lowers the amount of ultra processed food, sweeteners, emulsifiers, seed oils, margarines, or even sugar to an absolute minimum, roughly let's say 10% of your diet, and then get actual nutrition from real food for the other 90 to 80% of what you eat. Then you can actually experience what it's like to not have any sugar in your system. But I guess these were the adverse effects more of an experiment and not actually just quitting sugar and continuing down that path. Had I done that, it would have looked something like this. Through quitting sugar, my goal would have been to obtain a higher level of health. And with that goal in mind, I would have looked to quit some other foods. Ultra-processed foods would have been reduced a bunch. High-protein foods, like little snackables, for example, would be completely out of my system. And essentially, I would reap the rewards of what a no sugar diet has to offer. But onto the actual good effects I should have felt with having a no sugar diet. Within the first week, I might have had some cravings, but I never did. Why? Because I immediately jumped on to high sweetener foods. I was still getting my sweet itch. I should have also dropped in water weight the first day or two, and along with that, by the end of day 7, certain levels of brain fog should have lifted. By around day 14, I should have been feeling way better than I normally do. Fat should have been burning off of me because I would have had no more glycogen stores really in my muscles or in my fat cells. Naturally, I would have been in this weird state between ketosis and not really, because I'd still eat vegetables and fruits, which are forms of carbs, still giving glycogen to your muscles for energy stores, but in such small amounts that one workout would deplete them already. Fat would have dropped off me, and within a month, chances are I could have very easily lost between 2 and 3 kilos. Not only that, my skin would have felt way better. Now I don't really get many lesions or spots on my face, but on my stomach, I get a bunch. And trust me, when I was eating sugar, it was spotty as hell. It was not nice at all. Luckily for you, a lot of this stuff can be cleaned up just by once again going on a whole foods diet. So what actually happened afterwards? Well, the month after that, I had dedicated to eating absolutely no ultra processed foods at all. I wanted to see what the consequences, whether good or bad, from just having no sugar in my diet would be, and then similarly flipping that on its head and then trying no ultra processed foods and only having sugar in my diet. However, again, there's a little caveat. Sugar can be considered an ultra processed food. And so, even though I was allowed sugar, I was only really allowed one type of sugar, and that is coconut sugar. Why? Because coconut sugar contains a bunch of essential minerals and vitamins that you can still have from completely organic coconut sugar. That is what the next video is going to be about. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below and subscribe. Again, comment down below exactly what your journey was like. I'd love to hear that, and I'd love to interact with some of you guys. And expect a video on ultra processed foods and exactly what you can expect when you eat them and what you can expect when you cut them out of your diet next week. And a week after that, exactly what I personally went through when I cut out all ultra processed foods for 30 days. In the meantime, stay healthy and eat single ingredient foods. A whole foods diet beats anything else. Good luck.